Amelia lived on a remote farm, surrounded by weather-worn fences and a silence that seemed eternal. Since her husband's death years ago, the days dragged by like dry leaves in the wind, without haste, without color. She woke up early, took care of the chickens, cleaned the porch and talked to Medianoche, the black bull her husband had raised from a calf. Medianoche was more than an animal. He was the last living memory of a time when Amelia still smiled. Even as she got older, she refused to sell the farm. That was where his heart had roots. But the calm routine hid an open wound, one that grew deeper with each night. If this part touched you, share it with someone who needs to know they are not alone. Her son, Enrique, had moved back in with her 2 years ago after a messy separation and losing his job. At first, Amelia believed that his presence would bring some life to the house, but it soon became clear that Enrique was no longer the same. Consumed by drugs and anger, he would arrive home late, upset, aggressive. At first it was just screaming. Then came the pushing, and when Amelia stopped having anything to give, the punches came. Every night was an invisible battle. She hid her injuries under scarves, told her neighbors that she had fallen, that she was tired. But the truth was one. Amelia lived in fear inside her own home. On that particular night, the mood had been heavy since late afternoon. Enrique arrived earlier than usual, sweaty, with red eyes and a restlessness in his body that made even the cutlery on the table tremble. Amelia knew just by looking that something worse was coming. He tried to make tea, he tried to smile, he tried to avoid confrontation, but as soon as he opened the empty fridge, chaos began. "You gave everything to that useless animal, didn't you? I bet you still buy food while I'm starving here," he shouted, knocking the pots onto the floor. Amelia tried to explain. She tried to say that there was no money for her, that the bull's food came from leftovers from the pasture, but Enrique wouldn't listen. I just screamed. He only accused. With his nerves on edge, he began to tear up the kitchen. Plates, chairs, Grandma's old china cabinet. Everything turned to shards. Amelia backed away, leaning against the wall, as if her own body would disappear with her held breath. Outside, Medianoche was panting uneasily. He could feel the tension in the air, as if the walls of the house transmitted the fear of the woman who always offered him affection and tranquility. The bull paced in circles in the corral, kicking the ground impatiently, and Amelia, inside, without knowing that that animal, apparently tame and distant, was about to do something that would change everything. Enrique was not content with destroying the house. Anger overflowed in uncontrolled gestures, venomous words, and eyes that no longer looked like those of the son that Amelia raised with so much sacrifice. "You always liked that damn bull more than me," he spat, pushing her hard against the wall. She hit her head, staggered, but didn't fall. She tried to run towards the door, but he was faster. He grabbed her by the hair and dragged her across the room as if he were dragging a bag of garbage. The scream Amelia let out wasn't one of pain. It was one of defeat. It was the sound of someone who didn't know if he wanted to live anymore. Outside, Medianoche kicked the corral gate hard. The wood shook, one more, and another, until one of the boards gave way. The bull did not hesitate. He ran with all his might against the fence, breaking the rest of the boards with the weight of his body and the momentum of the silent fury he was holding back. The sound was like thunder in the early morning. Inside the house, Enrique looked at the door with a sweaty face and heavy breathing. Before I could react, the side wall shook. The sound of hooves on the ground echoed like a war drum. Medianoche burst into the house with his eyes fixed, focused on the only thing that mattered at that moment, protecting Amelia. Have you ever experienced something that turned your life upside down? Comment below. Sometimes sharing is the first step to healing. The impact was devastating. Medianoche hit Enrique with a well-aimed lunge, throwing him against the wall as if he were a rag doll. The boy let go of the machete he was still holding, and his body fell to the ground with a dull thud. But the bull did not stop. Even with a deep cut in his Back, the result of the knife that the attacker managed to stab in reflexively, Medianoche attacked again. It was as if decades of silence were condensed into each step, each blow. It was not just an animal acting on instinct, it was loyalty, it was love. Amelia, stunned on the ground, saw her son groan and try to get up, and she saw the bull place itself between them like a shield. With difficulty, she crawled to the corner of the room where her husband's old shotgun still lay, covered in dust and oblivion. Her hands were shaking. Each step she took was like crossing a field of memories, pain, and guilt. When she held the weapon, she felt the weight not only of the metal, but of the choice she would have to make. Enrique, wounded, raised his face and mumbled something through the blood. Amelia aimed but did not fire. Medianoche stood beside her, firm, bloodied, as if to say, "If you can't do it, I can." And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, Amelia understood that she was no longer alone. Time seemed to stop in that room. Amelia kept the gun pointed, her eyes fixed on her son, and all she could hear was Medianoche's heavy breathing next to her. Enrique, perhaps out of pain or fear, didn't try to move anymore. He remained there, fallen, with his eyes wide open, staring at his mother, as if only at that moment he had realized what he had done. "Were you going to kill me?" he whispered. And at that moment, Amelia didn't know if the question was a lament or a provocation. She slowly lowered the gun, not because she forgave him, but because she had already lost too much. She didn't want to lose what was left of her soul, too. If you're feeling something while reading this, maybe it's time to follow the page. This story still has a lot to say. Then the sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder along the dirt road that led to the farm. Someone, maybe a neighbor, maybe a miracle, had called the police. When the officers arrived, they found a scene that bordered on the surreal. Destroyed furniture, blood on the floor, a young man lying on the ground, a woman armed, and a black bull standing in the middle of the room, its chest heaving and its eyes alert. No one moved for a few seconds. One of the officers stepped forward and asked if she was okay. Amelia just nodded. The look in her eyes, however, said it all. She wasn't okay, but she was alive. As paramedics attended to Enrique and police officers photographed the scene, Amelia slowly walked out the front door. Her bare feet trod the wood of the porch, still damp from the night dew. Medianoche followed, limping, the open wound in his back still bleeding. She turned to him, and for the first time since this all began, she broke down. He knelt before the bull and wept. She cried like a daughter, like a mother, like a woman who had held the world on her shoulders for too long. He hugged that warm, strong, bruised body, and he promised right there that he would never be alone again. For the rest of the night, Amelia tended to each of Medianoche's wounds with old cloths and warm water. She whispered words she hadn't said in years, as if by caring for him, she was also healing forgotten parts of herself. No vet showed up. No one offered help, but they didn't need to either. Between the two, there was an ancient understanding built on silences and small gestures. Medianoche, even in pain, watched her with calm eyes, as if he knew that everything had changed. And there really, he was. Because that night, Amelia didn't just survive, she came back into existence. The following days were filled with silence and estrangement. The police took Enrique away without handcuffs, but also without any sign of remorse. There was no scandal, no resistance. He simply left. Amelia did not cry, nor did she ask to see him. She simply watched the car disappear down the road, her hands resting on the fence of the corral. Medianoche, beside her, seemed to smell the emptiness left by that son who had long since ceased to be a son. The house now seemed bigger, emptier, but also lighter. Every corner destroyed by Enrique began to be rebuilt with the little that Amelia had. Repurposed boards, old chairs, strength in her arms and soul. Did you stick around? Show it was worth it. Like, comment, or share. Over time, the story of the woman saved by her own bull spread around the area. Journalists, curious neighbors, animal advocates, and even people wanting to buy Medianoche for absurd sums came. Amelia refused them all, not out of pride, but out of respect. That bull was not a spectacle nor a showcase hero. He was part of the family. When asked what happened that night, she would simply reply, "He heard me," and it was true. For years, she screamed inside, suffocated in a cycle of pain no one saw. And when there was no more voice left, Medianoche heard what no one else wanted to hear. The farm never went back to the way it was before, and that, for Amelia, was a relief. She stopped pretending that everything was fine, stopped covering up her wounds, and smiling out of obligation. She started taking care of what really mattered, herself and Medianoche. She bought materials to renovate the corral, made a small garden where there had been rubble, and even fixed up the porch so that she could drink coffee there again, as she had done with her husband years ago. Sometimes she would sit next to the bull, with a blanket over her shoulders and a cup in her hand, and remain silent, just looking out at the open field. His presence was enough. The most surprising thing was to notice that Medianoche had also changed. Previously reserved, almost aloof, he began to accompany Amelia throughout the property. Wherever she went, he followed, calm, attentive. It was as if they had created an invisible pact that night. It wasn't just gratitude, it was alliance. People who previously doubted Amelia began to see her in a different light, not out of pity, but out of respect. She was no longer the frail farm lady, a victim of circumstances. She was the woman who survived, who defended herself, and who had the most unlikely of allies by her side. Despite her improvement, Amelia did not forget, not the nights she slept in fear, nor the look on her son's face as he pulled her hair against the ground. But she did not let herself be consumed by hatred either. She knew that somewhere, the boy she cradled in her arms still existed. She did not justify his actions. She never would, but she also did not want to carry the weight of anger for the rest of her life. Instead, she planted a tree in the backyard, exactly where Medianoche had broken through the fence that night. To remember that something that destroyed also saved, she said quietly, her hands still dirty with dirt. Medianoche seemed to understand. Whenever Amelia watered the tree, he would come closer, nuzzling her hand as a reminder that he was there. Over time, the tree grew, and along with it, a new routine was formed. Amelia began to welcome children from local schools to tell her story. She didn't use difficult words or dramatize. She only told the truth, with the calm of someone who had survived. She explained the signs of violence, the silence of the victims, and the importance of listening. And of course, she always ended by showing Medianoche, who, even though he was old and limping a little, still impressed with his calm and firm presence. The bull became a symbol of something greater, not just of courage, but of silent listening, of wordless protection. Some NGOs began to use her image in campaigns against domestic violence. Amelia received invitations for interviews, tributes, and even awards. She accepted some and refused many. "I'm not a heroine, I just didn't die, and he helped me with that," she would say, always pointing to Medianoche. She never wanted fame or money. She just wanted other women to know that they were not alone, that sometimes help comes from where you least expect it, and that surviving is, in itself, an act of resistance. Years passed. The tree grew strong, with deep roots and wide branches. Amelia no longer carried the traumas with the same weight. She learned to live with them, as if they were scars that reminded her but no longer hurt. Medianoche, now older, walked slowly, but still accompanied her on walks in the countryside. She spoke to him as if he were a person, and he responded in his own way, with a look, with a step to the side, with a light sigh that always seemed to say, "I'm here." That coexistence, so unlikely, had become love in its purest form, without demands, just presence. One morning, when she woke up, Amelia noticed that Medianoche was not in the corral. She felt a tightness in her chest, the kind you feel before saying goodbye. She found him lying under the tree, breathing slowly, his eyes closed. She knelt down beside him and gently stroked his forehead. "If you want to go, you can go. I'm fine now," she whispered, holding back her tears. The bull opened his eyes one last time, as if confirming what she was saying, and then rested. He left right there, to the place where everything had started all over again. Amelia did not cry at that moment. She just stayed there with him for hours, in silence. Medianoche's body at the foot of the tree and placed a large stone as a marker. He wrote just one sentence: "Here rest the strength and silence that saved me." After that, he began to take care of the place as if he were taking care of an altar. And every time I felt that fear wanted to return, I would sit there, put my hand on the ground and remember, because that's where she was reborn. And it was thanks to him, a bull that no one thought was special, that she found the courage to stay alive. Today, Amelia lives in peace. She continues to live on the same farm, now surrounded by flowers, trees, and visitors who come not out of curiosity, but out of respect. Her face has aged, but her eyes have a light that was never there before. Sometimes people ask her if she has forgiven her son. She says it is not about forgiveness, it is about moving on. Enrique is still in prison serving his sentence, and Amelia has never visited him, not out of revenge, but because she understands that some bonds, when broken so cruelly, never return to the way they were. Even so, she does not carry hatred. What she carries is the memory of an unexpected love, coming from where no one imagined. Medianoche was not human. He did not speak, he did not cry, but he was the one who stood between her and death. He who, in silence, listened to everything the world ignored. And so, every morning, Amelia passes by that tree and touches the stone with her fingers, as if to thank it. Because the love that saves does not always speak. Sometimes it has hooves, deep eyes, and the strength of a thunder that breaks down fences and destinies. If this story moved you, send it to someone who needs to believe again in the power of silent love.